It's a battle for supremacy between the SEC and the Big Ten in the college football playoff on the field, but also in regards to controlling the format off the field. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. Best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. We will accept your comments, and we appreciate those down below. Please like and subscribe. Keep in mind, we go daily with you each and every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Give me a call. All right, let's set up the SEC proposal versus the Big Ten proposal and what's on the line. The SEC, of course, with Greg Sankey coming to the forefront in recent weeks to say, we want the 5+11. What is that? Well, it's the 5 conference champions that are ranked the highest, which means most likely, save a catastrophe, the 4 Power 4 conference champions and the best of the group of 5, they have automatic entry into the playoff, and then 11 at-large bids selected by the College Football Playoff Committee. Tony Patiti in favor of the 4-4-2-2-1-3 system. 4 go to the Big Ten automatically regardless. 4 every season, at least 4 to the Big Ten. Same with 4 to the SEC, at least. 2 Big 12, 2 ACC, at least. Those are guaranteed spots, of course. 1 for the group of 5, guaranteed, and then the other are 3 at-large berths. Let's round this out, and let's also keep in mind that this is a PR battle as much as a strategic battle, and now that each commissioner has taken his stand, it would look bad if one of them backed down and lost the battle and gave in to the other. So what I expect happening here, a compromise. I don't know what that compromise would look like, but there's got to be a compromise because I don't think either one of these leagues or either one of these commissioners, with the pride on the line and the battle for the number 1 conference position, not just on the field, but in regards to influence, want to back down from this one and come up with a loss. So they're going to come up with a compromise, but also a compromise that looks like a compromise to the general public and the college football fan. Okay, 5+11. Is it fair? Well, it's as fair as the College Football Playoff Committee's competency. They've got an 11-year track record. In my eyes, they have made no egregious errors. Yes, almost every season you could say, well, number 5 or number 6 have as good a track record and resume as number 4, but a decision has to be made. They only had 4 spots in those first 10 years from 2014 through 2023. The biggest argument point, of course, coming in 2023 with Florida State, an undefeated ACC champion, left out in favor of 2 one-loss teams in Bama and Texas. But keep in mind, Florida State played in an inferior conference. They won the ACC championship game over a marginal, good Louisville team, but that finished with 3 losses, while Bama beat number 1 Georgia. And also, there is a injury factor in the playoff consideration, and the committee took full hold of that when they considered one of the best quarterbacks in the country, Jordan Travis, injured and out for Florida State's playoff run, and their offense looked anemic without him. So, yes, Florida State earned a playoff spot on the field, and it's too bad for those athletes that they couldn't participate in the playoff. However, the committee made a logical judgment call. Even though I disagree with it, they made a logical call. No egregious errors, and I'm not for the committee. If you follow me and have for years, you know that I'm not a committee guy. I want an objective system, not a subjective selection. That's an invitational. That's what we've had for 11 years. But they have no egregious mistakes. They've been put in some difficult spots from time to time, and they've made reasonable choices once again. So why can we not trust them in a 5+11 scenario as long as the networks stay out of it and don't influence them? And I know, wink, wink, when it comes to network influence, but that's going to come anyway, and that certainly comes in Tony Patiti's preference of the 4-4-2-2-1-3. I don't like a committee, but again, when we think about the big brands bullying the committee into a selection, well, in 2024, SMU did not have an overwhelming resume, nor did Indiana, but Indiana 11-1, I get it. But SMU 11-2 after a conference championship game loss to a 3-loss Clemson team. did not have an outstanding win on their schedule, and Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss did with just one more loss, and the committee pulled the trigger for SMU. So we only have one example during this 12-team playoff, and the committee pulled through for the little guy, not the big brands. All right, now let's look at the Tony Patiti preferred model of 4, 4, 2, 2, 1, and 3. This would ensure most likely better non-conference games because the non-conference games become meaningless. So is that a good thing? Well, we would have better matchups on the field, but they would be meaningless because we would go by conference standings. So the non-conference games are meaningless. So we get a lot of Ohio State, Texas, but what does it really matter? And then we've got this strange play-in game scenario possibility where, let's say in the Big Ten, Seed 6 plays Seed 3 and 4 and 5 play. So if you look at recent history of the Big Ten, now this is going to be mitigated to a certain extent with the influx of USC, Oregon, and Washington, UCLA from the West Coast with a stronger and deeper Big Ten, but still the likes of Iowa, Illinois, we've seen in recent years 6 and 3 teams that really have no business playing for a playoff spot would have that opportunity to play themselves into the college football playoff after a fairly marginal season at, let's say, 6 and 3 in the Big Ten. And with a non-conference loss, 8 and 4, I don't think that's good for the sport. And what I definitely don't like is the assumption that the Big Ten and the SEC are twice as good and have earned 2 spots. Of course, at the point that this decision is made is before anybody stepped on the field to decide anything. Not one play has been snapped, and we're already giving 4 playoff spots to the Big Ten and 4 to the SEC. Do I believe that those are the 2 best conferences? Yes, decidedly. However, I want to see it play out on the field. And then if we have competent selection, the SEC and the Big Ten will be rewarded based on the results on the field. But what happens if 2 or 3 ACC teams, and it's a possibility with especially top-end talent and teams and programs in the ACC, if Miami ever comes to life, Clemson, Florida State, could there be a scenario with 1-loss teams, maybe 2-loss teams out of the ACC and somebody gets left out because of that scenario? And I know it's only at least 2 out of the ACC or the Big 12, but again, I hate all people that love competition, true, fair competition, would say to make an assumption based on recruiting rankings, blue chip totals, past history, whatever, that you're going to start out a season and say, you know what, 4 playoff spots for them, 4 playoff spots for them, only 2 and 2 is ludicrous. Let the games be played and let the non-conference games count big in that 5+11 scenario. Let's go for that. And just to check in on 2024, the SEC went 9 and 3 against the ACC. That's pretty decisive. 3 and 2 against the Big 12. The Big 10 only 4 and 3 against the ACC. 3 and 1 against the Big 12. I understand the philosophy of the 4-4-2-2-1-3, and Tony Patiti, when he took over as Big Ten commissioner, he was only on the job for 1 or 2 weeks, and he let us know, hey, this is what's going to happen, and this is what we're striving for. Play big-time games in late October and November in our conference, so the best brands are going to play each other. And then in the next sentence, he said, and we're going to make sure that the Big Ten gets as many teams in the playoff as possible. So you hear those 2 statements, and they contradict one another. Well, if your big brands are playing each other, they're going to amount losses, and then you want the most teams in. Well, we got our conclusion. We got our mystery solved by Tony Patiti in forcing teams into the playoff that may not necessarily have earned it. Give it to the 5+11, not the best model. The final conclusion here, folks, is that to fix the playoff system, everybody's focused on how many teams are going to get in, what are the seedings going to be, how do you determine the seedings, where are the games going to be played, do you give buys to conference champions or the highest ranked teams, how do you do all this? The playoffs are going to be first and foremost fixed when the schedule is fixed and all the conferences agree on non-conference play. and balanced non-conference play, not USC going and playing Notre Dame and LSU and other schools across the country like Rutgers and Maryland and so forth, not playing anybody non-conference. That's not fair. That's not equitable. No, everyone playing equitable, balanced non-conference scheduling. Then we can't do anything about the conferences, but bring it up to the same number of conference games. But I like the 5-11 in this scenario in a very flawed system. Your thoughts down below. And again, Monday through Friday, the College Football Show right here at the Voice of College Football.